You call this a death world? That's adorable. Captain Liz Harrison gestured at the holographic projection of the planet that hovered between her and the alien delegation. I've seen more dangerous environments in my grandmother's garden. The six-armed Vkr'lak ambassador, whose name Liz couldn't pronounce without risking a throat injury, quivered its mandibles in what she had learned was their equivalent of indignation. Captain Harrison of Earth, you fail to comprehend the gravity of the situation, the ambassador chittered. Droxus Prime has claimed the lives of 17 elite Galactic Union exploration teams. The atmospheric toxins alone. Yeah. Methane pockets, acid rain, predators with too many teeth. Tuesday where I'm from. Liz leaned back in her chair, boots propped on the conference table, ignoring the scandalized looks from both the aliens and her own diplomatic officer. Look, we appreciate the concern, but we've reviewed your data. My team can handle this. The third alien in the delegation, a gelatinous blob named Dr. Ooze, not its real name, but the closest humans could manage, pulsed rapidly, its translator spitting out words in a monotone. The humans do not understand. They are overconfident. This will result in their extinction. Liz's executive officer, Commander Jackson Williams, cleared his throat. What my captain means to say is that humans have evolved on what you might consider an extreme death world by your standards. Our planet has prepared us for environments like Droxus Prime. Impossible, the Vkr'lak ambassador declared. No sentient species could evolve on a world more hostile than Droxus. Liz and Jackson exchanged knowing glances. Want to bet? Liz asked with a smirk. And that's how it began, the wager that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. 3 cycles earlier, the Galactic Union had discovered humanity quite by accident. A routine survey mission had picked up odd radio signals from a previously ignored yellow star system. What they found shocked them. A species that had not only survived on a Category 9 death world, but had thrived enough to develop spacefaring technology, despite having no contact with the greater galactic community. Earth, as the humans called it, defied categorization. It contained crushing oceanic pressures, scorching deserts, frozen wastelands, toxic plants, venomous creatures, and unpredictable weather patterns that could level entire settlements. More alarming still, the humans themselves seemed not just adapted to these conditions, but almost fond of them. The Union scientists designated Earth a Category 10 death world, the first of its kind, and established contact with these strange humans with extreme caution. The diplomatic teams expected a species of hardened warriors, perhaps even savage brutes. What they found instead puzzled them even more. The humans were odd. They smiled often, made bizarre noises they called jokes, and seemed to deliberately seek out danger for something they termed fun. Most concerning of all, they expressed interest in visiting other death worlds across the galaxy, not to conquer them, but out of something they called curiosity. The Union naturally forbade it, until now. The terms are simple, Liz continued, addressing the delegation aboard the Union diplomatic vessel. My team completes a standard resource survey of Droxus Prime. If we succeed where your teams failed, Earth gets official classification as a Class 10 death world, and humans get unlimited exploration rights to any world Category 9 or below. The Vkr'lak ambassador's exoskeleton clicked as it shifted uncomfortably. And if you fail? Then we admit you were right. Pack up our toys and go home. Earth remains under provisional status, and we stay in our little corner of the galaxy. Liz grinned. But we won't fail. Your confidence is irrational, Dr. Ooze pulsed. Our psychological profiles indicate humans possess a dangerous combination of curiosity and risk-taking behavior. That's just a fancy way of saying we're awesome, Jackson muttered. The third delegate, a tall avian being called Trill, finally spoke up. Unlike the others, Trill had been watching the humans with something closer to fascination than concern. I find these terms acceptable, Trill warbled, ignoring the shocked reactions from fellow delegates. Let the humans attempt the survey. Their success or failure will be instructive. Liz stood up and extended her hand toward the aliens. So, do we have a deal? After a moment of silent communication among themselves, the Vkr'lak ambassador extended one of its 6 limbs. We accept your terms, human. Your demise will be regrettable, but informative. Your confidence is touching, Liz replied, shaking the alien appendage. We drop in 12 hours. Have your observation team ready. As the human delegation left the conference room, Jackson leaned toward his captain. Ma'am, are you sure about this? The Union wouldn't have lost 17 teams if Droxus wasn't legitimately dangerous. Liz's smile faded once they were in the corridor. Of course it's dangerous, Jack, but compared to Earth, trust me, we've got this. I hope you're right. Because if you're wrong, we're not just losing a bet. We're losing lives. Have a little faith, Liz said, clapping him on the shoulder. Besides, I've got a secret weapon they don't know about. And what's that? Liz's grin returned, wider than before. I brought Australians. The human survey vessel Tenacity entered Droxus Prime's atmosphere precisely on schedule. From the Union observation ship, the alien delegation watched with a mixture of dread and scientific curiosity as the human craft navigated the toxic clouds and electrical storms with surprising competence. Their descent pattern is unusual, noted Dr. Ooze, its gelatinous form rippling as it analyzed the flight telemetry. They are taking a more direct approach than standard protocols suggest. Trill agreed, her feathers ruffling with interest. Either extremely reckless or surprisingly confident. The Karaxt ambassador chittered nervously. The toxicity levels in that region are lethal to most carbon-based life. They cannot possibly survive without... Wait, are they landing? On the view screen, the Tenacity had indeed begun landing procedures in a region that Union surveys had coded as extreme hazard, a rocky plain surrounded by dense vegetation where atmospheric toxins concentrated and indigenous predators were most numerous. They've gone mad, the ambassador declared. This will be over quickly. Inside the Tenacity, Captain Harrison was addressing her survey team, a hand-picked group of 12 humans from various Earth regions, each specializing in extreme environment operations. All right, people, listen up, Liz announced as the ship settled onto the alien surface with a soft thud. Union data suggests we've got 3 primary challenges: atmospheric toxins, aggressive fauna, and unpredictable weather. Standard stuff, but let's not get cocky. A burly man with a thick beard and even thicker Australian accent raised his hand. Question, Cap. The file says the predators here can grow up to 3 meters tall with exoskeletons like tanks. Any special instructions if we encounter one? Yes, Dr. Russell. Try not to adopt it as a pet. The team chuckled as Dr. Adam Russell, renowned biologist and former Australian Special Forces, grinned sheepishly. No promises, Captain. Liz activated the holographic display showing their survey area. We've got 72 hours to complete a standard resource survey. That's geological, biological, and atmospheric samples from 5 designated zones. She pointed to the red-marked areas on the map. Union teams never made it past Zone 2. What happened to them? Asked Dr. Kwan, their environmental specialist. Jackson brought up another display. Various unpleasant ends. 3 teams were dissolved by previously undocumented acid storms. 5 were attacked by indigenous predators. The rest succumbed to atmospheric toxins when their environmental systems failed. In other words, Liz added, Tuesday at Yellowstone. Suit up, people. We move out in 20 minutes. As the team prepared their equipment, Dr. Russell approached Liz. Captain, I've been reviewing the biological data from the Union surveys. Something seems off. What do you mean? The predator species they documented. They're described as hyper-aggressive, but the hunting patterns suggest defensive territorialism, not active predation. Liz considered this. You think the Union teams were seen as threats? It's possible. Most alien species evolved on relatively stable worlds with predictable dangers. They lack our adaptability when encountering new threats. Meaning? Russell grinned. Meaning they probably spooked the wildlife by acting like terrified tourists. No offense to our galactic friends, but they don't exactly scream apex predator. Interesting theory. What do you suggest? Let me take point when we encounter the local fauna. I think I can demonstrate a more effective approach. Liz nodded. Approved. But Russell... Yes, Captain? If you get eaten, I'm putting "I told you so" on your memorial plaque. Fair enough. The Droxus atmosphere hit them like a wall of heat and caustic smells the moment the airlock opened. Even through their environmental suits, the team could feel the oppressive conditions. Gravity 1.3 times Earth normal. Atmospheric pressure high enough to make their ears pop, and a swirling yellowish haze that limited visibility to about 50 meters. Well, isn't this lovely? Muttered Dr. Elena Volkov, the team's geologist, as she adjusted her sensor pack. Reminds me of field research in Siberian sulfur springs, except less hospitable. I think it's beautiful, said Russell, scanning the alien landscape with evident enthusiasm. Look at those crystal formations. They're refracting light in wavelengths I've never seen before. Liz activated her comlink to the ship. Williams, keep the engines on standby and maintain constant communication. If anything bigger than a house comes your way, take off and pick us up at Extraction Point Alpha. Copy that, Captain. Atmospheric analysis is coming in now. Looks like the Union data was accurate. Toxicity levels are off the charts. Your suits should hold up, but I wouldn't recommend taking them off for a picnic. Noted. Harrison out. She turned to her team. All right, standard formation. Quan and Volkov, start sample collection. Russell, perimeter check with Martinez. Everyone else set up the mobile lab. We've got work to do. The team moved with practiced efficiency, setting up their equipment despite the challenging conditions. Unlike the Union teams that had preceded them, there was no hesitation, no visible fear, just professional focus. From the observation vessel, the alien delegation watched in stunned silence. They appear to be adapting to the environment, Dr. Ooze noted with surprise. Their movements are purposeful. Perhaps they do not fully understand the dangers, the Kerr ex-ambassador suggested. The previous teams also began confidently. Trill leaned closer to the monitor. No, this is different. Observe their body language and formation. They are not merely surviving. They are operating as though this environment is familiar. On the surface, the human team had completed their initial setup and begun moving toward the first survey zone, a region of crystalline formations that Union teams had designated minimal risk, despite its proximity to a toxic gas vent. Dr. Volkov knelt beside one of the formations, scanning it with a handheld analyzer. Captain, these crystals are remarkable. They appear to be silicon-based, but with an unusual molecular structure that might explain their strange optical properties. Anything useful? Liz asked, keeping one eye on the ridgeline where the gas vent was located. Potentially. They seem to naturally filter certain wavelengths of light. Could have applications in optical technology or... Volkov stopped mid-sentence, frowning at her scanner. That's odd. What is it? The crystals are growing. Not just over time, but right now. I can actually see the molecular structure expanding. She looked up at Liz. And they're growing toward the gas vent. Russell joined them, his own scanner out. They're feeding on the gas. It's a silicon-based life form, not just a crystal formation. Liz tapped her comm. Jackson, are you getting this? We've got what appears to be a silicon-based life form that feeds on toxic gas. Copy that. The Union database has no record of silicon-based life on Droxus. This could be a significant discovery. Dr. Quan called from a few meters away. Captain, there's more. The soil samples show high concentrations of processed toxins. These crystal organisms aren't just feeding on the gas, they're filtering it like natural air purifiers. Liz smiled beneath her helmet. All right, people. I think we've just found why the Union missed this. They were so busy trying not to die that they failed to notice the planet is cleaning itself. Mark it down and collect samples. Let's move to Zone 2. As the team packed up their equipment, a low rumbling sound echoed across the plain. What was that? Martinez asked, hand moving to his sidearm. Russell checked his scanner. Seismic activity. No, wait. It's moving. Large mass, heading this way from the northeast. Everyone, defensive positions, Liz ordered calmly. Looks like we're about to meet the locals. The rumbling grew louder, and soon the ground itself seemed to tremble. From beyond the yellow haze emerged a massive shape, a creature that could only be described as a cross between an armored rhinoceros and a centipede, with multiple segmented legs and a head crowned with crystalline protrusions. That, Russell whispered, is absolutely magnificent. It's also heading straight for us, Martinez pointed out, raising his weapon. Weapons down, Liz commanded. Russell, you had a theory about these creatures. Time to test it. The biologist nodded, handing his equipment to Quan. Keep recording. This should be interesting. To everyone's shock, especially the watching alien delegation, Russell stepped forward, placing himself directly in the path of the oncoming creature. Instead of running or preparing defensive measures, he simply stood his ground, body language relaxed but confident. The massive creature slowed its charge as it approached, its crystalline sensory apparatus glowing with an inner light. When it was just 10 meters away, close enough for the team to feel the ground shake with each step, it stopped. Russell slowly raised both hands, palms forward, and then deliberately knelt on one knee, lowering his head slightly but maintaining visual contact with the creature. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, incredibly, the creature lowered its massive head and extended a smaller pair of appendages from beneath its armored front section. It's mimicking him, Quan whispered in awe. It's mirroring his non-threatening posture. Slowly, Russell stood again and took a careful step to the side. The creature followed his movement, then took its own step away, creating a path for the humans to proceed. I knew it, Russell said over the comm. They're territorial but intelligent. The Union teams probably presented as threats or competitors. They respond to body language and intentionality. Liz shook her head in amazement. Dr. Russell, when we get back to Earth, remind me to recommend you for the xenobiology medal, and maybe a psychiatric evaluation. The team cautiously proceeded past the creature, which watched them with what could almost be described as curiosity before rumbling off in another direction. In the observation vessel, the alien delegation was in an uproar. Impossible! The Vkr'lak ambassador chittered frantically. That species destroyed 3 Union teams. It should have attacked. Dr. Ooze's gelatinous form was pulsing rapidly. The humans are demonstrating unprecedented xenobiological intuition. They are communicating with a species we classified as non-sentient. Only Trill remained calm, her feathers smoothed in thought. Perhaps, she said quietly. We have been approaching this incorrectly all along. The humans don't survive despite the danger. They understand it in ways we cannot. By the 24-hour mark, the human team had completed surveys of 3 zones, already surpassing all previous Union attempts. They had established a base camp near the crystal formations, which provided some natural protection from the toxic atmosphere. Status report, Liz requested as the team gathered for a meal break inside a portable habitat dome. Dr. Kwan went first. Atmospheric analysis is fascinating, Captain. The toxins are actually part of a complex ecosystem. The gas vents release compounds that feed the crystal organisms, which in turn filter the air, creating pockets of breathable atmosphere for the larger fauna. Speaking of fauna, Russell added, we've documented 12 distinct species so far, all with similar crystalline sensory organs. They seem to communicate through light patterns and ground vibrations, non-aggressive unless threatened. The real prize is the geology, Volkov said, pulling up a holographic display of her findings. Those crystal formations aren't just alive. They're growing on mineral deposits that are off the charts. Rare earth elements, exotic compounds. Even some elements I can't identify yet. This planet is a treasure trove. Liz nodded, pleased. Any theories on why the Union teams failed to discover any of this? The team exchanged glances before Martinez spoke up. Permission to speak freely, Captain? Always. They were scared, ma'am. Their approach was all wrong. Maximum protection, minimal exposure, treating everything as a threat. They never gave the planet a chance to show them what it really was. That's because they've never lived on a real death world, Russell added. Earth taught us that dangerous doesn't mean hostile. Sometimes it just means complex. Liz considered this. So what you're saying is, the most dangerous thing on this planet, Kwan finished, was the Union's fear of it. Poetic, Liz remarked with a smile. Let's prove them wrong. Pack up and move out in 10. We've still got 2 more zones to survey. As the team prepared to move out, Jackson's voice came over the comm. Captain, we're tracking a massive weather system moving toward your position. Looks like one of those acid storms the Union warned about. Liz checked the meteorological data on her pad. Time to impact? Approximately 3 hours. It's a big one. Send the data to Kwan. We'll incorporate storm analysis into our survey. Harrison out. Kwan reviewed the incoming data with growing excitement. Captain, this is incredible. The storm's electrical pattern. It's not random. There's a distinct oscillation to the lightning discharges. Meaning? Meaning it might be another form of communication. The crystal organisms respond to light, right? What if the storms are part of the same system? A planetary scale network? Liz considered the implications. You think the whole planet is interconnected? Like a giant organism? Or an ecosystem that evolved to function as one? Russell suggested, joining the conversation. Earth has similar systems, microbial mats, coral reefs, fungal networks, just not on this scale. Find out, Liz ordered. I want solid data before we make that claim to the Union. And speaking of which, she tapped her comm. Williams, patch me through to the observation vessel. I want to give our alien friends an update. On the view screen, the Vkr'lak ambassador's mandibles twitched nervously. Captain Harrison, your team's survival continues to defy expectation. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Liz replied dryly. Thought you might like to know we've completed 3 survey zones and documented several discoveries your team's missed. Impossible. Our survey protocols are most thorough. Your protocols assumed everything here wants to kill you. We took a different approach. Dr. Ooze pulsed into view. We have observed your biologist's interaction with the apex predator. Most unconventional. Where we come from, we call it not being a jerk, Liz replied. Turns out if you don't act like food or a threat, you don't get eaten. Trill pushed forward, her avian features intense with curiosity. Captain Harrison, your methods challenge our fundamental understanding of Death World ecology. Would you permit a Union observer to join your team for the remainder of the survey? The ambassador chittered in alarm. Absolutely not. It violates protocol and— I accept, Liz interrupted. Send one observer. Minimal equipment and they follow my orders exactly. We're heading into Zone 4 in 30 minutes. I will join you personally, Trill announced, ignoring the protests of her colleagues. Prepare for my arrival. When the communication ended, Jackson turned to Liz with a concerned expression. Captain, are you sure about this? Having an alien observer might complicate things. Or it might help prove our point, Liz countered. Besides, Trill seems different from the others. She's curious, not just fearful. That's a start. Within the hour, a small Union shuttle delivered Trill to the human base camp. The avian alien was taller than most humans, with iridescent feathers that shifted color in the strange light of Droxus. Her environmental suit was bulkier than the humans, with multiple redundant systems visible. Welcome to our humble operation, Liz greeted her. I hope you don't mind roughing it. Trill's translator converted her melodic warbles into English. Your concept of roughing it appears to differ substantially from Union standards, Captain Harrison. Your team has already survived conditions that claimed 17 elite teams. Yeah, about that. We've been wondering, what exactly made those teams elite? Trill tilted her head, a gesture that translated across species as confusion. They were our most experienced explorers, with the most advanced protective technology. But were they adaptable? Did they have experience with rapidly changing conditions? Did they understand ecosystem dynamics? They were specialists, Trill admitted. Each selected for excellence in their field. Liz nodded. That's what I thought. On Earth, we learned that specialists die when conditions change. Generalists, adaptable problem solvers, they survive. An interesting philosophy, Trill noted. Is that why your team consists of individuals from different Earth regions? Partly. Each of them has experience with Earth's most extreme environments. Deserts, Arctic regions, high mountains, deep oceans. But more importantly, they know how to think beyond their training when things go sideways. As they frequently do on your world? Liz laughed. You have no idea. On Earth, we have a saying. The plan never survives first contact with reality. We plan thoroughly, then expect those plans to fail, and improvise from there. Trill's feathers rippled in what might have been amusement. A most chaotic approach to exploration. But effective, Liz pointed out. Come on, let's get you integrated with the team. We've got a storm to chase. Zone 4 proved more challenging than the previous areas. Located in a deep valley surrounded by crystal-encrusted cliffs, it featured steeper gravity wells and denser concentrations of atmospheric toxins. The approaching storm had accelerated, giving the team less time than originally planned. 2 hours until the storm front hits, Quan announced, checking her instruments. Atmospheric pressure is building. Trill observed the humans' preparations with evident fascination. Unlike Union teams, who would have established a defensive perimeter and hunkered down to wait out the storm, the humans were setting up additional sensors and preparing to collect data during the event itself. You intend to remain exposed during the acid storm? She asked Liz. Not exactly exposed. We'll use that cave system as shelter. Liz pointed to an opening in the cliff face. But we'll keep our instruments running. This might be our only chance to observe how the ecosystem responds to these storms. The risk seems unnecessary. Russell overheard the conversation as he passed by. With respect, Observer Trill, that's exactly the kind of thinking that got your teams killed. They saw the storms as threats to be avoided rather than phenomena to be understood. Explained the biologist who knelt before an apex predator. Trill responded, her translator unable to fully convey the dry tone implied by her warble. Exactly. And look what we learned. These creatures aren't mindless killers. They're part of a complex communication network. We think the storms might be too. As they spoke, the sky darkened ominously. Swirling clouds the color of bruised flesh gathered overhead, shot through with pulses of electric blue lightning that followed distinct patterns. Everybody into the cave, Liz ordered as the first acid droplets began to fall, sizzling where they hit exposed rock. Instruments deployed and recording. The team quickly moved their equipment into the relative safety of the cave mouth, positioning sensors to capture data from the storm while remaining sheltered from its caustic effects. Trill followed, her movements more hesitant, clearly uncomfortable with the proximity to what Union records classified as a lethal phenomenon. "Fascinating readings," Quan announced, watching the data stream in. "The electrical discharges are definitely following a pattern, and look at this. The crystal formations on the cliff face are responding. They're illuminating in sequence with the lightning." "Like call and response," Russell suggested. "Or a conversation." Trill moved closer to the displays, her scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming her caution. "This contradicts all previous Union observations. The storms were documented as random destructive events, not communication mechanisms." "Because your teams never stuck around to watch," Martinez pointed out. "They ran for cover or tried to shield themselves completely." Liz studied the patterns with growing excitement. "Quan, can you isolate the frequency patterns in those discharges? Compare them to the vibrations we recorded from the crystal organisms." "Working on it. Yes. There's a 87% correlation. They're definitely connected." The storm intensified, sheets of glowing rain cascading down the cliff face. Where the acidic water touched the crystal formations, they glowed more brightly, seeming to absorb energy from the caustic downpour. "They're feeding," Russell breathed in wonder. "The whole system. It's a massive energy cycle. The vents release gas, the crystals process it. The storms distribute water and electrical energy, and it starts all over again." "And the fauna?" Liz asked. "Look," Quan pointed to her scanner. "They're moving, all of them, migrating toward the crystal concentrations during the storm." Trill's feathers quivered with excitement. "The creatures use the storms as gathering times? For what purpose?" As if in answer, a group of the rhino-centipede creatures they had encountered earlier emerged from the haze, moving purposefully toward a massive crystal formation about 100 meters from the cave. They were joined by several other species, forming a circle around the glowing structure. "Are they worshipping it?" Martinez wondered aloud. "Better," Russell said quietly. "They're communicating through it. Watch their crystalline sensors. They're all pulsing in the same pattern." The gathered creatures remained in their circular formation as the storm reached its peak intensity. The central crystal structure glowed with increasing brightness, its light pulsing in complex patterns that matched both the lightning overhead and the smaller lights on the creatures' bodies. "It's a network node," Quan realized. "The whole planet is networked through these crystals, and the storms activate the system. It's like the internet, but organic." Trill's translator struggled to keep up with her rapid warbling. "This is unprecedented. A planet-wide biological communication network that incorporates weather patterns and multiple species." "On Earth, we have smaller versions," Russell explained. "Fungal networks that connect trees, bacterial mats that function as superorganisms, but nothing on this scale." "Because Earth is too chaotic," Liz suggested. "Too many competing systems, too much environmental variation." "Exactly," Quan agreed. "Droxus is harsh but stable. The same threats have existed for millions of years, giving the ecosystem time to evolve these incredible adaptations." As they watched in awe, the storm began to subside, its energy apparently absorbed by the crystal network. The gathered creatures dispersed, moving with purpose in different directions. "I believe," Trill said slowly, "that the Union has severely misunderstood this world, and perhaps others like it." Liz nodded. "Death worlds aren't just obstacles to overcome. They're complex systems that require understanding, not fear." "A lesson," Trill admitted, "that humans seem uniquely qualified to teach." The final survey zone proved relatively uneventful after the revelations of the storm. The team worked efficiently, collecting their samples and completing their data analysis well ahead of schedule. By the time they returned to the Tenacity, they had accumulated more useful information about Droxus Prime than all previous Union expeditions combined. Back aboard the Union observation vessel, Captain Harrison presented their findings to the stunned delegation. The holographic displays showed the complex interconnections between Droxus's seemingly hostile elements, the toxic vents feeding the crystal organisms, the acid storms distributing energy, the fauna participating in the communication network. "In conclusion," Liz finished, "Droxus Prime isn't a death world at all. It's just a world with rules we didn't understand and systems we failed to recognize." The Kirkst ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "This is most irregular. You claim that 17 Union teams failed because they were too cautious?" "Not exactly," Liz corrected. "They failed because they approached Droxus as an enemy to be defended against, rather than a system to be understood. Their fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy." Dr. Ooze pulsed thoughtfully. The human perspective is illuminating. Perhaps our classification system requires revision. Perhaps more than that, Trill suggested, her feathers sleek with conviction. Perhaps our entire approach to exploration requires revision. The ambassador chittered uncomfortably. You propose we adopt human methodologies? They are unpredictable, chaotic, adaptable, Trill corrected, and successful where our methods failed 17 times. Liz smiled. I believe we had a wager, Ambassador. Earth gets official classification as a Class 10 death world, and humans get unlimited exploration rights to any world Category 9 or below. After a moment of silent communication among themselves, the Vkr'lak ambassador extended one of its 6 limbs. The Union honors its agreements, Captain Harrison. Your terms will be implemented immediately. Actually, Liz said, I'd like to propose an amendment. The aliens looked at her in surprise. Instead of just giving us exploration rights, let's create joint human-union exploration teams. We share our adaptability and intuition, you share your technology and experience. Together, we reclassify these so-called death worlds and learn from them instead of fearing them. Trill's feathers ruffled with excitement. A most promising proposal. The scientific potential alone would require significant protocol adjustments, the ambassador interrupted, though its tone seemed less dismissive than before, but perhaps worth considering. More than considering, Dr. Ooze pulsed. The humans have demonstrated capabilities our species lack. Logic suggests cooperation would benefit all parties. Liz extended her hand. Then we have a new agreement? After a brief consultation, all 3 alien delegates reached out their various appendages to touch Liz's hand in a somewhat awkward but symbolically important gesture. We have an agreement, Captain Harrison of Earth, the ambassador declared. The age of cooperative exploration begins today. 6 months later, Liz stood at the observation window of Union Station Alpha, watching as 3 new exploration vessels prepared for departure. Each carried a mixed crew of humans and various Union species, bound for worlds previously designated too dangerous for exploration. Jackson joined her, handing over a cup of coffee, a beverage that had become surprisingly popular among certain Union species. The Vkr'lak ambassador is requesting your presence at the commissioning ceremony. Apparently, it's considered auspicious to have the Death World diplomat bless the mission. Liz groaned at the nickname that had spread throughout Union space. Tell the ambassador I'll be there shortly. How are the new teams shaping up? Better than expected. The Union species are quick learners once they get past their initial caution, and our people are enjoying the advanced technology. Russell's been like a kid in a candy store with those new biosensors. Speaking of Russell, has he stopped bringing alien pets back to Earth yet? Jackson laughed. Define pet. He insists they're research specimens, but the crystal node from Droxus definitely responds when he talks to it. Liz shook her head in amusement. Some things never change. But some things do, Jackson noted, nodding toward the loading bay where humans and aliens worked side by side, preparing for journeys into the unknown. 6 months ago, they thought we were suicidally reckless primates from a planet too hostile for rational life. Now they're following our lead into the most dangerous corners of the galaxy. They ruled death worlds, Liz said with a smile, until they set foot on Earth. Turns out our greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't our adaptability or our endurance. What was it then? Liz watched as a young human scientist demonstrated proper storm sampling techniques to an attentive group of Union specialists, her gestures animated with infectious enthusiasm. Curiosity stronger than fear, she answered. The ability to look at something terrifying and think, I wonder how that works, instead of running away. That's humanity's superpower. Jackson raised his coffee cup in a toast. To humanity's superpower. To curiosity, Liz agreed, clinking her cup against his. And to whatever strange new worlds it leads us to next. As the first joint mission ships launched into the swirling void, carrying their mixed crews toward planets once deemed impossible to explore, Liz couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to discover that when it came to confronting the universe's most dangerous environments, humanity wasn't just prepared, they were enthusiastically taking notes. The end. So, there I was, standing in front of the most powerful beings in the galaxy with a severed head in my hand, and you know what I said? What did you say, Grandpa Jenkins? I said, your receipt, assholes. The children gathered around the old man gasped in delight at the profanity, eyes wide with the thrill of hearing a forbidden word. One of them raised a tiny hand. But Grandpa, Mom says we're not supposed to say that word. Well, your mom isn't telling the story of how humanity saved the galaxy from tyrannical space lobsters, now is she? Jenkins winked at the child. Sometimes, kiddo, the only appropriate response to an empire of murderous crustaceans is a good old-fashioned Earth curse word. Tell us the whole story, another child demanded, bouncing on her knees. From the beginning. From the beginning? Well, that's quite a tale. Jenkins settled deeper into his hover chair, the ancient piece of furniture creaking in protest. I suppose we've got time before your parents come to collect you hooligans. All right then. Let me tell you the story of how a single human, yours truly, walked into the Galactic Senate and changed the course of history with nothing but a pulse rifle, a bad attitude, and the severed head of Emperor Vkr'lak the Merciless. It had been exactly 42 standard galactic days since the Vkr'lak Armada had appeared in Earth's orbit. 42 days since humanity learned they weren't alone in the universe. 42 days since the lobster-like aliens had declared Earth a new tributary world of the glorious Vkr'lak Empire. 41 days since Earth had told them, in no uncertain terms, to go screw themselves. The Vkr'laks hadn't taken it well. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Jenkins stared at the smoldering ruins of what had once been downtown Chicago. The Sears Tower, which he still refused to call by its newer name, thank you very much, was little more than a twisted skeleton of metal rising from the ashes like some post-apocalyptic monument. He took a long drag from his cigarette, a habit he'd picked up in the last month despite having quit for 15 years. If there was ever a time to resume terrible coping mechanisms, it was during an alien invasion. Sir, we've got movement to the north, said Corporal Martinez, her dark eyes never leaving the scope of her rifle. Looks like a scouting party. 6, maybe 7 of the bastards. Jenkins flicked his cigarette away. Let 'em come. We've got a surprise for them. The surprise was an improvised electromagnetic pulse generator that the eggheads from MIT had cobbled together. It turned out that while the Vkr'laks had mastered faster-than-light travel, their combat armor was embarrassingly vulnerable to good old-fashioned EMP blasts. Something about their neural interfaces shorting out and cooking their brains inside their armored exoskeletons. Jenkins wasn't going to complain about the design flaw. You know what I don't get? Said Specialist Kowalski, fiddling with the detonator. If these guys are so advanced, how come they still need to send ground troops? Why not just blast us from orbit and be done with it? Resources, Jenkins replied. Earth's got something they want. Can't extract it if they turn the planet into a smoking crater. What's so special about Earth? Jenkins shrugged. Water, maybe? Minerals? Hell, could be they're after our reality TV shows for all I know. They're basically space lobsters. Who the hell knows what space lobsters consider valuable? Kowalski snorted. Maybe they just want to eat us. Dip us in some of that clarified butter they're always demanding in our surrender terms. Wouldn't put it past 'em, Jenkins agreed. Though I'd like to think even alien palates have standards. Martinez raised her hand for silence. They're getting closer. 200 meters and closing. Everyone get ready, Jenkins ordered, signaling to the other soldiers hidden among the rubble. Remember, once the EMP hits, we've got about 10 seconds before their backup systems kick in. Make every shot count. The small squad of human soldiers checked their weapons one last time. It was a pitiful resistance compared to the might of the Vkr'lak Empire, but they'd learned to be effective. Humanity might be outgunned and outmanned, but they were scrappy as hell and willing to fight dirty. The Vkr'lak scouting party came into view, their armored exoskeletons glinting in the afternoon sun. They moved with an eerie mechanical precision, each step calculated, their multiple appendages moving in perfect harmony. The things stood nearly 8 feet tall, with their primary claws capable of snapping a human in half without effort. Jenkins waited until they were perfectly positioned over the buried EMP device. Now, he whispered into his comm. Kowalski hit the detonator. The pulse was invisible, but the effect was immediate. The Vkr'laks froze mid-step, their armor locking up as the electrical systems went haywire. Then came the screams, high-pitched, gurgling sounds that still gave Jenkins nightmares. Open fire! The humans emerged from their hiding spots, weapons blazing. Armor-piercing rounds designed specifically to penetrate Vkr'lak exoskeletons tore into the paralyzed aliens. It wasn't a fair fight, but fairness had gone out the window when the invaders had reduced half of Earth's major cities to smoldering craters. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. 6 Vkr'lak soldiers lay dead, their blue-green blood pooling around their shattered armor. Check for survivors, Jenkins ordered, approaching the fallen aliens cautiously. And someone get me that neural interface from the commander. Intelligence will want to see what they were up to. Martinez was already working on extracting the device from the largest of the fallen Vrillians. "Sir, you should see this," she said, her voice tight. "I think we just hit the jackpot." Jenkins peered over her shoulder at the alien device. Unlike the standard neural interfaces they'd recovered before, this one was ornate, decorated with what appeared to be precious metals and glowing crystals. "What am I looking at, Corporal?" "If I'm reading this right, sir, this wasn't just any scouting party. This was a royal guard." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I think the big one might be Emperor Vkr'lak himself." Jenkins stared at the dead alien, then at the strange device. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we just got ourselves a bargaining chip." "What are you thinking, sir?" Kowalski asked, a note of concern in his voice. "I'm thinking," Jenkins said, pulling out his combat knife, "that it's time humanity made a house call to the Galactic Senate." The Galactic Senate chamber was a marvel of engineering, a massive spherical room with thousands of hovering platforms arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking dais. Each platform held representatives from the myriad species that made up the Senate's membership. Some were humanoid, others resembled everything from giant insects to sentient gas clouds contained in special environmental suits. The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation as news spread of the unexpected visitor demanding an audience. It had been over 300 cycles since an unannounced speaker had been granted access to the Senate floor. But the circumstances were unusual. High Chancellor Vkr'lak, a 12-foot-tall avian creature with iridescent feathers and 4 arms, raised his ceremonial staff, calling for silence. The room gradually quieted. "Esteemed colleagues," Vkr'lak's voice boomed through the translation systems, reaching every corner of the massive chamber. "We face an unprecedented situation. A representative from the newly discovered species from the Orion Spur, a human from the planet Earth, has arrived unannounced at our chambers and is demanding to address the Senate." Murmurs swept through the chamber again. "Silence!" Vkr'lak commanded. "As many of you know, Earth was recently claimed as a tributary world by the Vrillian Empire, as is their right under Expansion Treaty 447B. This human claims to have information vital to galactic security and stability. While unorthodox, I have decided to allow this address." The murmuring grew louder, with several representatives rising on their platforms in protest. "The decision is made," Vkr'lak said firmly. "Guards, bring in the human." The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open, and a single figure strode in. By the standards of many galactic species, the human was unimpressive. Bipedal, of average height, with only 2 arms and 2 legs. This particular specimen was male, wearing what appeared to be damaged military attire from his homeworld. He carried a large opaque container under one arm. Jenkins walked to the center of the chamber, his boots echoing in the sudden silence. He'd never been one for public speaking, but the crash course in galactic politics he'd received on the journey here had made one thing clear. In the Senate, theatrical gestures carried weight. He set the container down on the speaking dais and stared up at the High Chancellor. "Human," Vkr'lak addressed him. "You have been granted an extraordinary privilege to address this body. State your name and the purpose of your visit." Jenkins cleared his throat. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Thomas Jenkins of Earth. I'm here because your precious Senate has turned a blind eye while the Vrillian Empire commits genocide against my people." The translation systems carried his words to every platform, resulting in an explosion of outraged chatter. "Order!" Vkr'lak demanded. "Human, these are serious accusations. The Vrillian Empire has followed all proper protocols for claiming an undeveloped world within their expansion zone." "Undeveloped?" Jenkins barked a laugh. "We've split the atom, visited our own moon, created digital intelligence, and produced thousands of seasons of reality television shows. We were on the verge of our own FTL breakthrough when the Vrillians showed up. If that's undeveloped by your standards, then your standards are garbage." More outraged gasps echoed through the chamber. A representative from a gelatinous species oozed forward on their platform. "The human speaks out of ignorance," the alien burbled through the translator. "The classification system is based on established metrics of galactic citizenship, not technological advancement alone. Earth has not achieved the 5 pillars of— the 5 pillars of civilized existence," Jenkins interrupted. "I read your handbook on the way here. Unified planetary government, sustainable ecosystem management, elimination of internal warfare, establishment of stable colonies beyond the homeworld, and— what was the last one? Oh, right. Spiritual transcendence beyond physical needs. Real convenient set of requirements that conveniently allows you to label any world you want to conquer as undeveloped." The gelatinous representative rippled in what might have been indignation. Jenkins continued. But I'm not here to debate your classification system. I'm here because in the past 42 days, the Vkr'lians have killed over 200 million humans. They've reduced our cities to rubble. They've demanded we surrender and become their slaves. The Vkr'lian Empire does not engage in slavery. Another representative interrupted. This one a tall insectoid creature. They practice indentured citizenship, a legally recognized form of— Call it whatever pretty name helps you sleep at night, Jenkins snapped. Where I come from, forcing people to work for you under threat of death is slavery. And humanity doesn't do slavery. Not anymore. High Chancellor Zaktal raised a hand for silence. Human. While we sympathize with your situation, the Senate cannot interfere with the legal expansion of a recognized empire. The Vkr'lian claim to your system was properly filed and approved. If your species wishes to petition for protected status, there are proper channels. Protected status, Jenkins laughed bitterly. By the time your bureaucracy processed that request, we'd all be dead or wearing Vkr'lian shock collars. No, I'm not here to file paperwork. I'm here to inform you of a change in leadership within the Vkr'lian Empire. With that, Jenkins reached for the container he'd placed on the dais. The Senate guards immediately raised their weapons, but Zaktal gestured for them to hold. A change in leadership? The High Chancellor questioned. Explain yourself, human. Jenkins popped the seal on the container and reached inside. With a theatrical flourish that would have made Shakespeare proud, he lifted a severed Vkr'lian head into the air, holding it high for all to see. Esteemed members of the Galactic Senate, Jenkins announced, his voice ringing through the chamber. May I present the head of Emperor Vkr'lak the Merciless, former ruler of the Vkr'lian Empire and the architect of Earth's invasion. The Senate erupted into chaos. Representatives leaped to their feet, some screaming in horror, others buzzing or chirping or whistling in their native languages too complex for the translators to handle in the cacophony. The guards moved forward again, but Zaktal, his feathers standing on end in shock, once again motioned them back. Order! The High Chancellor shouted, pounding his staff on the floor. Order! Gradually the chaos subsided, though the tension in the room remained palpable. Human, Zaktal said, his voice tight with controlled rage. You have committed an act of unspeakable barbarism on the Senate floor. The punishment for assassinating a galactic leader. Whoa! Hold on there, Birdman, Jenkins interrupted, still holding the head aloft. I never said I killed him. The Emperor made the mistake of personally leading a scouting mission to Earth. He ran into a human resistance cell. My resistance cell. What happened next was a simple matter of self-defense. Jenkins finally lowered the head, placing it carefully back in the container. Where I come from, we have a saying. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Emperor Vkr'lak played a very stupid game when he decided to invade Earth. This, he tapped the container, is his prize. A new representative moved their platform forward, this one a Vkr'lian. The alien's exoskeleton gleamed with the markings of high status, and their voice when they spoke was filled with barely contained fury. I am First Minister Vkr'lak of the Vkr'lian Empire. This human savage has murdered our beloved Emperor and desecrated his remains. I demand immediate sanctions against Earth and the extradition of this criminal for proper justice. Jenkins turned to face the Vkr'lian representative, a cold smile on his face. Funny thing about that, First Minister. Before I left Earth, I had a long chat with one of your field commanders. Amazing what people will say when they're properly motivated. He told me all about your Empire's real plans for Earth. The commander was obviously lying to save himself. Vkr'lak dismissed. Our intentions toward Earth are peaceful integration, as with all our tributary worlds. Yeah? Then why does the invasion plan specifically call for the harvesting of all Earth's water, resulting in the death of our entire biosphere? Why does it call for the forced relocation of human survivors to your mining colonies? Why does it refer to humans as, and I quote, particularly durable work stock? The Vkr'lian representative's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of nervous fidgeting. These are baseless accusations. The human provides no evidence. Jenkins smiled wider. Oh, but I do. He pulled a small device from his pocket. This is the neural interface we recovered from your Emperor's armor. My people have figured out how to access its memory banks. Everything is here. The real invasion plans, the resource extraction schedules, the population control protocols, everything. He tossed the device onto the dais, where it clattered noisily in the silent chamber. But that's not even the interesting part, Jenkins continued. The interesting part is what we found about your Empire's other tributary worlds. Turns out Earth isn't the first planet you've planned to strip mine into oblivion. You've done it at least 7 times before, all with Senate approval because you classified the inhabited worlds as undeveloped. 7 entire species, gone. 7 genocides sanctioned by this very body. Now the Senate erupted again, but this time the outrage was directed at the Vkr'lak representative, who had backed away on their platform. Jenkins raised his voice over the din. We humans have a saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The Galactic Senate has been fooled at least 7 times by the Vkr'lak. I'm here to make sure there isn't an 8th. High Chancellor Zaktal, looking deeply troubled, raised his staff once more for silence. These are grave accusations, human. If what you say is true— It is, Jenkins interrupted. And I'm not finished. Because my species isn't like the others you've encountered. We don't surrender easily, we don't go quietly, and we're really, really good at fighting back. He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire Senate now. In the 42 days since the Vkr'lak arrived, humanity has destroyed over 30% of their invasion force. We've reverse-engineered their weapons, their shields, and their communication systems. We've learned more about galactic technology in 6 weeks than we might have discovered on our own in a century. Jenkins pointed at the Vkr'lak representative. And now we've killed their emperor and accessed his neural interface, which contains, among other things, the complete technical specifications of the Vkr'lak fleet, including the coordinates of their homeworld and all military installations. Vkr'lak's claws clicked together in agitation. You lie. Such information would be encrypted beyond your primitive ability to— Turns out, Jenkins interrupted with a smirk, your encryption isn't nearly as good as you think it is. Or maybe humans are just better at breaking codes than you expected. Either way, we have everything. He turned back to the High Chancellor. Here's how this is going to work. The Senate is going to immediately revoke the Vkr'lak claim on Earth. You're going to classify us as a protected developing world, off-limits to all outside interference. The Vkr'lak forces are going to withdraw from our system entirely, and the Senate is going to launch a full investigation into every world the Vkr'lak have claimed in the past 50 years. Or what? Vkr'lak demanded. Jenkins smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Or we send the complete technical specifications of Vkr'lak military technology to every world in the galaxy. I imagine there are quite a few species out there with grudges against your empire, who would love to know exactly how your planetary shields work, or the precise frequency needed to disrupt your fleet's communication systems. The chamber fell silent again, the implications sinking in. That would destabilize the entire quadrant, Zaktal said quietly. It could lead to countless deaths. Yep, Jenkins agreed. Messy business war. We humans know that better than most. We've been fighting amongst ourselves for our entire history. It's made us very, very good at it. So good, in fact, that we managed to kill the emperor of a vastly superior alien empire with nothing but improvised weapons and stubborn determination. He looked directly at Vkr'lak. Imagine what we could do if we really put our minds to it. The Vkr'lak representative backed away further, clearly unsettled. High Chancellor Zaktal conferred quietly with several advisors on his platform before addressing Jenkins again. Human, you place this body in a difficult position. What you propose violates numerous Senate protocols and established precedents. And what the Vkr'lak have been doing violates basic decency and the right of sentient beings to exist, Jenkins countered. Sometimes protocols need to be broken to serve the greater good. I thought that was what this Senate was supposed to be about. Zaktal's feathers rustled as he considered the human's words. A recess is called, he finally announced. The Senate will deliberate on this matter in private. Human, you will be escorted to a waiting chamber. Jenkins nodded, picking up both the container with the Emperor's head and the neural interface. Take all the time you need, but know this. There's a human fleet waiting for my signal. If I don't contact them within the next 6 hours with news of the Senate's cooperation, they'll begin broadcasting the Vkr'lak military specifications to every corner of the galaxy. It was a bluff, of course. Earth had no fleet, just a handful of retrofitted Vkr'lak shuttles they'd captured. But these aliens didn't know that, and Jenkins had learned early in his military career that sometimes the boldest bluff was the most effective. As the guards led him from the chamber, Jenkins couldn't help but smile at the chaos he'd left behind. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were making one hell of an entrance. You did what? General Hastings roared, her face turning an alarming shade of red even on the grainy holographic transmission. Jenkins winced. He'd expected this reaction when he finally made contact with Earth Command, but it didn't make it any easier to bear. I presented our demands to the Galactic Senate, ma'am. By bringing them the severed head of the Vkr'lak Emperor? Have you lost your mind, Jenkins? With all due respect, General, I saw an opportunity, and I took it. We needed leverage. Leverage is one thing. Parading around with a decapitated alien head is another. Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic nightmare you've created? Jenkins held his ground. The diplomatic nightmare started when the Vkr'lak showed up and started glassing our cities. I just changed the terms of the conversation. Hastings pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture Jenkins recognized as her attempting to stave off a migraine. And this bluff about a human fleet ready to broadcast Vkr'lak military secrets? What happens when they call you on it? They won't, Jenkins said with more confidence than he felt. These Senate types are bureaucrats, not warriors. They'll choose the path of least resistance every time, and right now that path is giving humanity what it wants. The general stared at him through the holographic connection, her expression unreadable. Finally she sighed. For your sake, for all our sakes, I hope you're right. Because if you're wrong, you might have just signed humanity's death warrant. If I'm wrong, Jenkins replied quietly, we were already dead anyway. The door to his waiting chamber slid open, revealing one of the Senate guards. The Senate has reconvened. Your presence is requested. Jenkins nodded. Gotta go, General. Wish me luck. Jenkins? Hastings called before he could end the transmission. Whatever happens, that was one hell of a gutsy move. He allowed himself a small smile. Just doing what humans do best, ma'am. Causing trouble. The transmission ended, and Jenkins followed the guard back to the Senate chamber. The mood inside had changed noticeably. The frantic energy had been replaced by a tense, expectant silence as he walked to the central dais. High Chancellor Vkr'lak stood at the highest platform, his forearms clasped in front of him in what Jenkins had learned was a gesture of formal declaration. Human Representative Jenkins, the High Chancellor began. The Senate has deliberated on your unusual petition. While your methods are unorthodox and deeply concerning, the evidence you have presented regarding Vkr'lak activities has raised alarming questions that cannot be ignored. Jenkins remained silent, waiting. Therefore, by emergency powers granted under Senate Charter Article 7, Section 12, I hereby declare a temporary suspension of all Vkr'lak expansion activities pending a full investigation. Earth is to be classified as a protected developing world, and all Vkr'lak forces are ordered to withdraw from the Sol system immediately. A murmur ran through the chamber, but no one dared to openly object. The Vkr'lak representative, Vkr'lak, had notably disappeared from their platform. Vkr'lak continued. Additionally, a Senate investigation committee will be formed to examine all Vkr'lak tributary acquisitions from the past 50 standard years. If evidence of systematic exploitation or genocide is discovered, appropriate sanctions will be applied. Jenkins felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It had worked. Against all odds, his insane gambit had actually worked. Thank you, High Chancellor, he said formally. Humanity accepts these terms. Do not thank me, human, Vkr'lak replied coldly. What you have done here today, bringing violence into these sacred chambers, threatening the stability of galactic politics, goes against everything the Senate stands for. While we address the Vkr'lak situation, know that Earth's actions will not be forgotten. Jenkins met the alien's gaze without flinching. With all due respect, High Chancellor, what the Vkr'lak did to Earth, and apparently to 7 other worlds before us, goes against everything sentient life should stand for. If the Senate had been doing its job properly, I wouldn't have had to bring an emperor's head to your doorstep to get your attention. He gestured to the Senate at large. You all sit up here in your fancy chamber, making rules and classifications, deciding the fate of entire species without ever setting foot on their worlds. You let empires like the Vkr'lak run roughshod over undeveloped planets, because it's convenient for your politics and your economies. Jenkins shook his head. Well, humanity is putting you on notice. We won't be classified, contained, or conquered. We won't play by rules designed to keep us powerless. And if another empire comes knocking on our door looking for easy prey, they'll find out exactly what happened to Emperor Vkr'lak. The Senate chamber was deadly silent now, every representative frozen in place as they processed the human's words. High Chancellor Vkr'lak's feathers bristled. Is that a threat, human? Not at all, Jenkins replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's a promise. Earth wants peace. We want to join the galactic community as equals, not as slaves or subjects. but we'll fight with everything we have if pushed. He tapped the container at his feet. Consider this a receipt for services rendered. One tyrannical empire stopped in its tracks. You're welcome. With that, Jenkins turned and walked out of the Galactic Senate, leaving behind a chamber full of stunned aliens and the severed head of an emperor who had gravely underestimated humanity's capacity for defiance. And that, Grandpa Jenkins concluded, leaning back in his hover chair, is how humanity secured its place in the galaxy. The Vkr'lians withdrew from Earth. The Senate investigation revealed they'd destroyed not 7, but 11 species before us, and their empire was subsequently dismantled by Senate decree. The children stared at him, wide-eyed and silent for once. "You really cut off the Emperor's head?" one of them finally asked. "Well," Jenkins hedged, "technically it was already detached when we found him. His armor had malfunctioned during the EMP blast and, well, Vkr'lian physiology doesn't handle neural feedback loops very well. But the Senate didn't need to know those details." Another child raised her hand. "Did you really threaten to start a galactic war?" Jenkins chuckled. "Let's call it a strategic negotiation. Sometimes you have to convince people you're crazy enough to do the unthinkable in order to get them to do the right thing." "Is that why humans got a seat on the Senate so quickly?" asked the oldest child. "Because they were afraid of us?" "Partly," Jenkins admitted. "But also because once they got to know us better, they realized humanity had something valuable to offer the galactic community." "What was that?" Jenkins smiled, memories of the decades since first contact flashing through his mind. The technological exchange programs, the cultural ambassadors, the joint scientific missions, and yes, the formation of the Human Defense Force that now helped maintain peace across 3 sectors. "Perspective," he said finally. "We showed them that sometimes the rules need to be broken for the greater good. We taught them that bureaucracy without compassion is just oppression with better paperwork. And we reminded them that every species, no matter how undeveloped by their standards, has the right to determine its own destiny." He leaned forward, his voice softening. "But most importantly, we taught them something about humanity that the Vkr'lians learned the hard way. You should never ever corner something that's willing to fight to the death, especially if that something is human." The front door slid open, and parents began to file in to collect their children. Jenkins winked at his grandkids. "Now remember, the part about me saying assholes in the Senate is our little secret." The children giggled and nodded solemnly, scampering off to greet their parents. Jenkins watched them go, these descendants of the generation that had faced extinction and spit in its eye. They would never know the terror of those dark days when humanity stood alone against an alien armada. They would grow up in a galaxy where humans were respected, even admired, for their tenacity and ingenuity. All because one desperate soldier had walked into the Galactic Senate with the severed head of an emperor and the audacity to demand justice. Not a bad legacy, Jenkins thought, for the son of a Kansas wheat farmer who'd just wanted to see the world. Turned out he'd seen the galaxy instead. The end.